What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and earlier this week, I put a bow on top of my Dynasty rankings. I finished a huge update for the month of April for, essentially my official pre-draft rankings, my top 290 Dynasty rankings in Superflex Tight End Premium. I'm very proud of them, so we're going to show them off a little bit here today. Now, on top of the top 290, you get my positional tiers where I break down each and every single position and you get a ton of information. All of this is found on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I'll have a link down below in the description, a link down below in the comments section. But for every single position, I went through, I broke them up into tiers pretty much just based on how they're tiered in the top 290. You get their change since last update. You get their new ranking, their RS grade prospect tier. So you can even see, Michael Mayer's in there as a gold. You can see all of these players. The rookies are included, so you can kind of see where do I have the rookies among current NFL players, veterans, whatever you want to call them. I have the tight end archetype here, freak, athletic possession. And then what we're going to go through today, we're bringing back, or maybe not bringing back, but a classic video format on this channel. We do it every single weekend season. We do it sporadically throughout the offseason. We're going to go through my must buy and sell trade targets for Dynasty Leagues. We're going to go through 5 players, and all of them are going to be either hard buys or hard sells. I go through for every single player, and they're either neutral, hard buys, hard sells, soft buys, soft sells. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's a way so you can look through your team, you're making a trade, and you're like, I have one guy, TJ Hockenson. This guy is asking for TJ Hockenson. Is he somebody that I really want to give up at market value? Let's see where Ron has him in his rankings and kind of what his buy-sell recommendation is there. So I think there's a lot of utility here. Again, you can find it at patreon.com/Ron Stewart. If not, I hope you enjoy the video. We're going to do a little bit of a sneak peek with some hard buys and sells that I already have ready to go for this video. So as always, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
Now, our first buy today is a little bit, I don't know if I would call this off-brand for me, but it's not a very sexy buy or a very interesting buy. And if I was a smarter person, I probably wouldn't have this as the first buy in the video. But we're going to have Aaron Rodgers here. Now, for every single one of these guys, I want to let you guys know where I have them ranked and then where ADP has them. The ADP I use is from Adeko. He used to have a Google Sheet. Now he's on a Bean Counter site, but I think the ADP part is free. So I'll make sure to try and link it down below. If I don't, yell at me. I'll get it linked down there. So on his ADP, Superflex Tight End Premium, Aaron Rodgers is the 905 as the QB 23. In my rankings, he's my 703 as my QB 19. So that's a full 2 rounds ahead of consensus. And I think right now there is a very real market issue in Superflex Dynasty Leagues where QB2s are super expensive because they're safe assets. They're guys that are, I guess, like young and they're pretty, right? Like your Daniel Joneses and your Tuas and even like your Kirk Cousins and your Russell Wilsons are all in like the top 6 rounds of Dynasty startup drafts. And they don't really provide you a huge edge in terms of winning. They just are kind of like very comfortable QB2s, which aren't assets that I really like to have on my team. Now, what I mean by that is that QB2s aren't really helping you get an edge over your league mates. This is a really good and honestly a simple chart too from Bean Counter. His ad is there at DF Bean Counter, and he sort of showed here and broke it down the difference in production at quarterback in each quarter of the top 24. So your top 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 18, 19 through 24. And you can see top 6 quarterbacks average 22.9 points per game. Then you have 7 through 12, 18.3, 13 to 18 is 16.7 points per game. 19 to 24 is 14.8 points per game. He then showed the advantage. So how much are you getting an edge over that next group? From the bottom from 19 to 24 to 13 to 18, you have just a 1.89 point per game advantage, then a 1.63, and then that top 6 quarterback is giving you a 4.57 point per game advantage over the back end QB1s, and not even to mention the back end QB1s, but the advantage that it's giving you over all of the top 24 quarterbacks, or 7 through 24, is absolutely massive. So we want to have the 20 point per game guys, the top 6 guys, and then ideally just piece together the cheapest way to get yourself into that, 17 to 24 area. There's not a huge edge to having quarterbacks in that range. So ideally, you just want the cheapest guys in that area. So that's where I get tripped up paying big prices for Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Tua. Like, think to yourself, you're holding onto a quarterback, especially if they're like top 6 round value startup type picks. Do they have access to 22.9 points per game or even 20 plus points per game? Or maybe not 20 plus points per game, but like, top 6 quarterback production. I think Tua had a very small stint last year of 20 points per game, but to have one of those guys finish as a top 6 quarterback in fantasy, I think you're asking a lot. So I wanted to sort of see what this tier looks like on Underdog. So Underdog Fantasy right now, by the way, promo code Ron gets you a deposit match up to $100 on there. They have a Superflex tournament out right now. So it's a really nice way to kind of see how the market views this range of quarterbacks. So these are all guys that I would consider like QB2s, guys that I don't really think have a path to a top 6 finish. And I know it's chicken scratch. I know it's not great, but I wrote their startup ADP round next to each name. So Tua goes in the 3rd round, Daniel Jones is a 4th rounder, Kirk Cousins is a 6th rounder, Goff is a 6th rounder, Geno's a 7th rounder, Russ is a 6th rounder, Derek Carr's a 7th rounder, and you have Aaron Rodgers smack dab in the middle here at QB 14 going in the 9th round of startups. And I think that we have a lot of like uncertainty here where he's like not on the Jets yet, and like I completely understand that you have the risk that he's like trying to retire after every single season, it seems like. But the way I approach QB2s, I don't really care about the safety and the certainty or whatever. I don't really value having a steady QB2 because we looked at that other chart. Having a steady QB2 isn't winning you dynasty championships, fantasy championships. So I want the cheapest way to get there. Aaron Rodgers, based on this, is much cheaper than the alternatives. I'll lean into the uncertainty because I do think by the time that like he's signed with the Jets and it's all good to go, I think 9th round becomes like 7th or 8th. And there's also a lot of upside here with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is the only guy on this list, I think, with a previous top 6 finish in fantasy. I think you could say Russell Wilson's in there as well. But Aaron Rodgers has a little bit of a track record here where, of course, 14.8 points per game this year was not good. By the way, QB 21 still is a QB2, and the other guys we just showed aren't giving you a massive advantage over a QB2. Now, before that, there is some upside here. Now, again, 2022 was the first year since 2018 that he didn't have Nathaniel Hackett as his offensive coordinator. Nathaniel Hackett comes to the Jets to be his offensive coordinator, and he made sweet, sweet music with Nathaniel Hackett here. QB8 finish in 2021, 21.1 points per game, 24.3 points per game as your QB4. QB14 in 2019, that's like about his baseline, what we can kind of expect here. That's where he's getting drafted, QB14 on Underdog. And 17.3 points per game, 9th round startup pick is a really, really nice way to get maybe not meaningful production, but cheap production at a spot that doesn't really win you games. But it can win you games if you get to that production cheaper than everybody else, right? If everybody's spending up on their QB2 somewhere in like the 3rd to the 6th round, and you can match their production from a guy that you got in the 9th round or you traded like a 2nd or some change for, then you can start to sort of stack an advantage on your opponent. So when we look at what you can kind of pay for Aaron Rodgers right now, and I don't want to hear like, I mean, he didn't have much weapons in 2022. He now has Garrett Wilson. I know like Allen Lazard is an amazing and everything, but Garrett Wilson's a true number 1 wide receiver. He didn't have that last year. Garrett Wilson, I think that he's somebody that can be one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL. He is going to be the number 1 wide receiver there. You have Lazard. You have talks like OBJ. They could attack somebody in the draft. A lot of good stuff going on there. Breece Hall, the run game, everything. And you also have Aaron Rodgers. Look, you guys know, like, I don't love the narrative stuff and the, like, every single football player wants to go on the field, be great. They're going to do a lot of work in the offseason to be great. Every football player has that in their DNA. Aaron Rodgers, though, there is something about the Packers not wanting him anymore and trading him to the Jets, and everyone thinks that Aaron Rodgers is washed and this and that. And it feels like there is a bit of a chip on his shoulder to come out, play well. He's already like doing workouts and working super hard. So I'm excited. I think that there is upside for him to go from, you're getting him in the 9th round of startups and he can return a top 8 finish this year just based off of like he has, if you look through, I don't have the stat on hand with me right now, but if you look through like touchdown percentage among all active quarterbacks, like Aaron Rodgers is at the top of the list, and then he's at the bottom of the list for interception percentage. He is very good at the touchdown interception ratio stuff, where I think he had a ton of interceptions last year, not a ton, but a lot for Aaron Rodgers. But before that, he would have like that 48 passing touchdown season. I want to say it was like less than 6 interceptions. As much as he's not giving you much on the ground these days, he's not giving you super negative like interceptions and all of that. So he is somebody that on efficiency, on low pass attempts, right? Like 526 pass attempts is the lowest amount of pass attempts in this whole sample here. And it's his best fantasy season. Like on low volume, he is so efficient that he can get you into like 20 plus points per game just because he's Aaron Rodgers. So if he taps into that, then there's a lot of profit to be had here. Now, when we talk price, we're using a different tool here from it's Fantasy Calc is the website. And I just wanted to pull up like real trades. They pull trades from like everywhere. I filtered it to 2 quarterback, 12 team PPR. I don't want to just talk out of my ass and give you like, oh, you can trade a third for Aaron Rodgers. I want to show actual trades here. And these are some moves that I like. The top one, you can take, some random wide receiver 2, pair him with so random wide receiver 2 would be Mark Cooper. You can pair him with a Taylor Heineke. You can pair him with, I don't know, like any random quarterback people like a Drew Lock, maybe a Tyler Huntley. I'm trying to think of like some other guys in that weird ambiguous area, like maybe Bailey Zapp. Like if you could do a Mark Cooper and Bailey Zapp for Aaron Rodgers, I would love that. That's one of the steeper prices though. I do like this Alec Pierce. Dang it. It's repeated. Come on. All right, I'm truly sorry about that. All right, so now we have Alec Pierce, Jimmy G down below, and you can kind of see what I'm getting at here, where instead of doing like an Amari Cooper, you can kind of shift that towards a Jimmy G, or if you want to shift it towards, I'm trying to think of like the other like non-sexy quarterbacks, maybe like a Jordan Love could work. I honestly think that you could maybe sell Jordan Love for Aaron Rodgers plus right now, which I would absolutely love. I'm trying to think through. Not Purdy. Could you do what's that? There's like a tier like Desmond Ridder. Could you do Desmond Ridder and Alec Pierce and get into Aaron Rodgers? Maybe if it's a rebuilding team, maybe you add a third on top. So stuff like that. Like I think Alec Pierce would be a piece that I would move off of for an Aaron Rodgers. Like same with like a Romeo Doubs, I think as well. Some year 2 wide receiver that maybe somebody's like a stand for, plus some random quarterback or a young quarterback with like perceived upside. Again, like your Bailey Zappies and your Desmond Ridders or like Malik Willis's, those types. And then as well, we see here 2024 second and a 2023 fourth. So you can get them for like a second and some change as well, which I think is also a fine price to pay. Now, next up here, we have a pair of wide receivers. And I got to be honest with you guys, I didn't have this plan when I came into it, but this video is going to be like value over replacement themed at this point. We're going to kind of go through where are wins coming from, where can we get wins, how can we get an advantage over our field, and how can we sort of make moves towards acquiring those players today. So the 2 players we're going to talk about here, we kind of bunched them together. They're the same. I'm not going to say the same guy. Of course, Davante Adams, perimeter wide receiver, crazy route runner, wins in a different way than Cooper Kupp. But in terms of their profile, like 30-year-old wide receivers, you can bank on 20 plus points per game. That's the archetype. Now, their ADPs versus my rank isn't that different, right? Their ADP right now, Cooper Kupp, the 407 as the wide receiver 15. He's my 401 as the wide receiver 13. So really nothing too crazy there. And by ADP, Davante Adams is the 410 as the wide receiver 16. He's my 402 as my wide receiver 14. I have them back-to-back in my rankings. Slightly ahead of consensus, but I think that's their startup value. I think you can buy them for cheaper in leagues. I think in leagues, especially if there's a guy out there who has like rookie fever, really wants rookie picks and wants to sort of offload their veterans, I think you can kind of buy these guys for more like a 5th, 6th round startup type price tag. Now, the reason I like them is because, again, this wasn't the motive when it came to this video, but it just kind of like spiraled into this where I wanted to kind of attack the idea of value over replacement. So I did the same thing that Bean Counter did, but I did it for wide receivers here. And we can see where we're getting an edge over the rest of the field when it comes to wide receivers. The top 6 wide receivers average about 20 points per game. This is data from 2015 to 2021. And that you get a 3.3 point advantage over wide receivers 7 through 12 for about 16.9 points per game. They get about like a 1.5 advantage over your wide receiver 13 to 18, and then that gets like a 1 point advantage over your wide receiver 19 to 24. So the biggest advantage you can have are those 20 plus point per game difference makers at wide receiver. We've already known that, and I've been harping on that for a while, but it's something I kind of wanted to visualize and show you. Now, this is a really simple way of looking at like value over replacement and that kind of stuff. I think, maybe deeper into the offseason, I'll do a bigger deep dive on like VORP and wins above replacement and all of that stuff. But for now, I think this is kind of a nice simple way to show that. And when we talk about Davante Adams and Cooper Kupp, they are, very much known assets at this point. But Davante Adams has finished as a top 6 point per game wide receiver, which is what we're gunning for here in 5 straight seasons. Then we have Cooper Kupp, who has been, over the last 2 seasons, the overall point per game wide receiver 1, north of like 23 points per game. We both know that these guys are a good bet as any to finish as a top 6 wide receiver and challenge for 20-plus points per game. So the way we're looking at it is we want to pull up the top 12 wide receivers. In my eyes, to be real with you guys, I think the only guys you can really bank on 20-plus points per game is Jefferson, Chase, Hill, Kupp, Diggs, Davante Adams. I think everybody else is a long shot to hit 20-plus points per game. And I even love A.J. Brown. I just don't know that the volume is there for him to hit 20-plus points per game. Those are the 6 wide receivers I would have as good bets. Now, Jefferson and Chase are untouchable. Tyreek and Diggs are both third-round startup picks. Davante Adams and Kupp are the cheapest of the bunch. And like I said, I think you can get them for cheaper on the market. So these are some trades that I pulled up on Fantasy Calc. And you can see, they aren't anything too crazy. These are the 2 Cooper Kupp ones. You can buy Cooper Kupp straight up for a 24 first on a contending team. And I'm not saying like a tweener, like this team can be a playoff team. I'm talking about a team, maybe you got first, second, third last year, top 3 in points for minimum. And it's just like, you know what? Wide receivers are a little bit lacking at this point. Why not buy a veteran on the cheap? Because if Cooper Kupp was in season scoring a ton of points, you couldn't just send out 124 first as a contending team and buy him off of somebody. So right now is the best time to buy these guys. And then also, if you're a team that is like trying to contend and you have one of these year 2 wide receivers that are a little bit overvalued, like I would say Jameson Williams is in there. I would say George Pickens. I think you can make the case that even my beloved Treylon Burks, these guys who didn't do a ton as rookies, they kind of feel like from last year, like your Rashod Bateman, Devonta Smith, Elijah Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Of course, you can, hit really, really big on Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you could also just have, Devonta Smith didn't make you a huge profit from where you got him last year. He went from probably like a 6th-round startup pick to like a 4th-round startup pick. So that's kind of profile you're looking at with a lot of these year 2 wide receivers, especially Jameson Williams, who's like a 5th right now. So if I was a contending team and I could take Jameson Williams in a second and go get Cooper Kupp, and I guess Chase Claypool counts as a piece in this deal, but that's a deal I would love to make. Year 2 wide receiver that I'm not like all that excited about, plus a second for Cooper Kupp, would absolutely love that. Now, we also have 2 Davante Adams deals here. The Jerry Jeudy one's very similar to the Jameson Williams one. Any of these middling wide receiver 2s, I don't even mind Jeudy. I don't even have Jeudy as a sell, but I'd be more than open to the idea of Jeudy in a second for Davante Adams. I'd be more than open to that as a contending team. Same thing again, Jameson Williams, Pickens. I'm trying to think of some other guys. I think I would do DJ Moore in a second to get to Cooper Kupp or Davante Adams too. I'm trying to think through those other types. Pittman is a tough one to get there. Any of those, I think as well, any of those like Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, who I'm trying to think through. There's just this massive, massive tier like Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson. Is there anybody else I'm forgetting? But, that tier of wide receiver, I would pay up to go from, those guys are your quintessential wide receiver 2s. If you could pay less than a first to get into the 20-plus point per game area in wide receiver production, you should go do that. Now, again, either or, I would pay a 24 first straight up for either of them. Oh, yeah, and the Freiermuth deal is interesting, too. I don't even think Freiermuth is really a sell for me. I think I'll put Dallas Goedert in there as well, but if, you're one of these guys that has, maybe you have Freiermuth, Dulcich, and, Zach Ertz or something, and you can part with a Freiermuth. If you can part with one of those, middle, I think Hockenson, Freiermuth, Goddard, if I could part with any of those 3, some change, right, like a 3rd and a 4th, and end up with Davante Adams or Cooper Kupp, I think that'd be a really sharp deal as well. Now, our 3rd buy here, we have Mark Andrews. And the ranking here isn't too far off. He is ADP's 311 as a tight end 3. He is my 301 as my tight end 2. So about a round ahead. And let's take the same approach. I really didn't have the MO of wanting this to be a value over replacement crash course. But let's take the same approach here. Let's look at tight end production. And we have the average from 2015 to 2021 of your top 3 tight ends, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, 10 through 12. Now, the reason we didn't do 1 through 24 is because you're starting 1 tight end, right? With quarterbacks, you're starting 2 of them. Wide receiver, you're starting a lot more than just 2, but we'll just leave it at 2 for now, just in terms of like a very cookie-cutter lineup. Tight end, you're only starting 1 guy. We don't care about tight end 13 to 24. So when we look here, we have an even bigger advantage. Like, this advantage goes toe-to-toe with having a top 6 quarterback, having a top 3 tight end. And you can see the average top 3 tight end from 2015 to 2021 averaged 17.1 points per game, which is a 4.2 advantage over the tight ends in 4 through 6, who average about 12.9 points per game. And then it's really flat. 4 through 6 is 12.9 points per game. 7 through 9 is 11.5. 10 through 12 is 10.5. 12.9 to 10.5 is a pretty closed, it's not a very wide range. After those top 3 tight ends, it really falls off a cliff. And you can like, I'm not going to say 10x it, but you can like multiply it a little bit when it comes to tight end premiums. You could multiply these numbers by like 1.5 in tight end premium. That's obviously not like the exact calculation, but just to sort of hammer it home that the gap even widens with tight end premium, and then it even gives you an advantage not just over the other tight ends, but now these guys can start scoring toe-to-toe with your Davante Adams, with your Cooper Kupp, based on tight end premium, giving you massive, massive spike weeks as well. So that is all really exciting. We should all be wanting to, it's almost like a race. I compare it to Catan sometimes, where I would almost say Dynasty, like your motive should almost be to stack up as many as the high advantage players as possible. I know that sounds like of course, Ron. Like, of course we want the 17 point per game tight ends and the 20 point per game wide receivers and the 20 point per game quarterbacks. But I think there are some guys that approach Dynasty where they're just cool having just a ton of players that aren't in that top tier. I would rather scrap together the rest and have as many players in that top tier advantage area as possible. So when we talk through here and we sort of look at 17 plus points per game, why is this important for Mark Andrews? And the reason is that there are very few guys that have actually hit 17 plus points per game at the tight end spot. And Mark Andrews is one of them. He is somebody that I think is very undervalued right now. I keep getting like the 4th round in the startup mocks that I stream on this channel. People just keep sleeping on him even in tight end premium. If we look here, these are in my entire database. These are the only tight ends with 12 plus point per game seasons or better that are active in the NFL. Among those, there are only 4 tight ends active right now that have a 17 plus points per game. Among those that are active, only one of them is younger than 30 years old, and it's Mark Andrews. 17 plus points per game is a very big deal. And the easiest way to project forward a 17 point per game season is by doing it before, right? The best way to repeat a 17 plus point per game season or have a 17 plus point per game season is by doing it in the past. So, I mean, we look at the rest of this list. Kelce, of course, I think Kelce's a buy. I'll say as well, disclaimer on this whole buy section, I love Mark Andrews. I think Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts are also buys. Now, Kyle Pitts, whole other discussion for another day, but I think he's young. It's unfair to say he hasn't had a 12 plus point per game season yet. He can't have a 17 plus point per game season. It's too early. He has the profile where he's splitting out wide. He can play wide receiver. 17 plus points per game is in his range in my eyes. Maybe not this season because the offense is so bad and Arthur Smith and everything, but I think eventually. Now, when we talk about Mark Andrews, the biggest thing on top of this is that value over replacement chart, he's giving you a huge advantage week to week, but then he's also giving you a really scarce asset, right? When we talk about the other positions, right, it's the top 24. So quarterbacks, there's going to be like 6 to 8 20-plus point per game guys. Wide receiver 2, there's going to be like, 4 20-plus point per game guys at wide receiver. At tight end, there's 1 or 2 usually that hit 17-plus in a given season. And if you have that guy on your team, you're instantly a contender. And not only instantly a contender, but while that top dog is producing and giving you that, value over replacement and everything, he becomes a borderline untradeable asset. I had leagues out there where Mark Andrews was crushing through 10 weeks. Of course, the Lamar Jackson injury happens, but he's crushing early on in the season, and you couldn't go and trade for him because whoever has him is probably, top 2, top 3 in points for. If you have one of these tight ends that are giving you 17 plus points a game, especially in tight end premium, they are so hard to go trade for in sharp leagues because if a team has that type of production, it's probably carrying them forward. So again, I mean, to add on top of that, why would a contender trade off of that tight end if they're winning games and scoring points? So what I'm saying is now, while he's not scoring points, Mark Andrews, and he has like some of the Lamar Jackson, smut on him, and you have the sort of not scoring points down the stretch last year. He is as cheap as ever. He's not scoring points right now. This is the only time to buy for a relatively cheap price. Like I think last year, through those first 10 weeks, you probably had to pay like a mid-second startup pick for him, like value-wise. Now you can get him at like the 3-4 turn in startup. So this is the cheapest you can get him. Again, I think that he is somebody that can challenge for 17 points per game. I think he's the best bet to challenge for 17 points per game. I will say as well, when we look at this again, Waller isn't as dusty as Ertz. Waller is maybe a sneaky, fun, like cheap bet to get to 17 points per game, but that's not who we're going over here. Now, when we talk about Mark Andrews, like I haven't talked anything about a situation. It's like, Ron, he's not going to put up 17 points per game. He's not going to have Lamar Jackson. This offense historically has sucked and just run the ball a ton. And here's the reason for optimism. First of all, as of right now, Lamar Jackson hasn't gone anywhere. Nobody has come out and said, we're giving an offer to Lamar Jackson. We'll see if the Ravens match it. As of right now, sportsbooks have him as a favorite to stay home. -175. I don't know. It's like a 65% chance that he stays home, that he stays as a Raven. Right now, he is a favorite to just stay a Raven. And I think that's what happens. I think he stays a Raven. But even if not, there is a lot of excitement for this Ravens offense with Todd Monken as GM, not Greg Roman. I cannot stress enough. It is absolutely huge that they are getting Todd Monken instead of Greg Roman, who ran a very slow-paced, run-centric offense. You have Todd Monken coming in here. And this is a blurb that I read yesterday, but I think it's still something that I should echo a little bit louder here. And Harbaugh said earlier this offseason, it's 100% likely that it will be different. It's always changing. This will be a bigger change because we've gotten a new offensive coordinator. We've gotten new coaches in place. I think we're going to be exciting. We're going to be fun. We're going to still run the ball, but we're going to throw the ball. We're going to run up-tempo, probably even more than we've been, maybe a little more no-huddle. We're going to be living in a lot of different worlds with our offense, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Now, this highlighted part is, however, this was probably the third time where Harbaugh mentioned picking up the pace on offense. It was also a popular topic during Harbaugh's offensive coordinator interviews after Greg Roman's departure. So this is Harbaugh probably looking around the league, seeing modern offenses that run up-tempo, pass the ball a ton, your Chiefs, your Bills, and he wants to get in on the fun, right? He has an MVP-winning quarterback. He has a weapon in Mark Andrews and some promising guys, and Rashod Bateman. Maybe we'll add to it. I don't know. But let's bring in a more modern offense, which is really, really exciting for the passing game here, especially Mark Andrews, who we can bet to be the team lead in targets on a offense that is going to have much more volume. And then if you get the added benefit of Lamar Jackson in that Todd Monken offense, there's fireworks. It's exciting. It's all really, really good stuff. Now, when we look at the trades for Mark Andrews, I literally took a screenshot of 4 of these because they all looked amazing. We'll go bottom to top here. You have Elijah Moore, Kittle in a second for Mark Andrews in a second. So if you can take, I even like Kittle myself, but if you can take a Kittle, a Goddard, Freiermuth, any of these guys, and you can sort of go out there and add an Elijah Moore or a second and get into Mark Andrews, do that. If you have a Jared Goff, one of these sort of expensive quarterback twos, Goff, Daniel Jones, Tua, of course, you wouldn't want to add a first on top of those guys. But, the guys that we talked about earlier with Aaron Rodgers, even Geno Smith in that area, if you can add on a draft pick to one of them or trade straight up for Mark Andrews, please go do that. Irv Smith in a 24 first is just laughable. TJ Hockenson in a 24 second, please do that. If you have TJ Hockenson, that is a beautiful, beautiful deal. And it's actually a perfect segue into our first sell of the day, which is TJ Hockenson. Let me tell you why TJ Hockenson in a second for Mark Andrews, if you have TJ Hockenson, is one of the best things you can do for your Dynasty team. Now, TJ Hockenson is ADP's 406 as the tight end 4. This is tight end premium, and my 603 is my tight end 5. So I am 2 rounds lower than consensus on him, and he is the tight end version of your Daniel Jones, your Tua, your Kirk Cousins. You are paying up for uncertainty, and I guess there's some upside baked in where he's he's going into year 5 now, and he's perceivably young. So it's okay, they're on the upward trajectory. They're safe bets to, finish as it's not tight end 2, but it's tight end 4 through 8 for Hockenson. And we look at the best point per game seasons at tight end since 2020. That's just the last 3 seasons. We have this chart right here. And I have it broken up by, your 17 plus points per game, then that next tier, that next tier, that next tier. And here we have, Waller, Andrews, Kelce as your 17 plus points per game guy, then Kelce, Kittle, Gronk, Kittle. Then you have Andrews, then you have Hockenson twice, and you have Hockenson in 2020 at the bottom. So Hockenson has now played 4 seasons in the NFL, I believe, and he is giving you nothing but really just replaceable 12 points per game, like we just saw. Like 12 points per game, if we look at this chart here, 12 points per game isn't really giving you a ton, right? Like if we look at what he's given you, it's like been around 12 points per game. It's actually all been shy of that 12.9 number in that just like yearly tight end 5 area. And again, that's not really winning you games. So that's the issue I have with him. Even if you want to use just the Vikings games from this last year, it's still just 13.2 points per game, which is still, I guess that would be in like your 3 to 4 area, but it's not really giving you a huge edge over the rest of the field, right? 13.2 would just be 1.7 of an edge versus your like 7 through 9. So it's really not a ton. I mean, if you want to spin it away where, I don't know, he's going into like year 5 here, tight ends break out later. He cracked 13 points per game on the Vikings last year. Maybe he has like a huge breakout. Maybe you want to have that. I just have a hard time buying in. He's not like explosive after the catch. He doesn't have a high ADOT like a Mark Andrews. You already have Justin Jefferson there taking all the targets. So for him to get to like a 100 catch season, like a Zach Ertz, 17 plus points per game, is really, really tough. And I wanted to kind of show you guys, this is a Daco's ADP, and this is just kind of showing you guys what startups look like right now. Now, bear with me. I'm not in the frame right now, but this is kind of how I approach tight ends. I have this like dead zone to me. I wouldn't include Kittle in this dead zone, but like Hockenson, Goddard, Freiermuth, where you're paying up for guys that I don't think have a very clear path to that 17 plus points per game. I'd rather go the cheaper route. Like I have the green guys circled of guys that I like in this area of like Waller, Ingram, Dulcich, Okonkwo, even Fant at the bottom. I like those guys as just kind of like cheap bets for that like tight end 4 through 10 production. Because again, if you don't have a 17 plus point per game guy, you might as well just punt the position. That's the way I play it. Then we have above that, right, your third rounds tight ends and above, Andrews, Pitts, Kelce. Those are all guys I want on my team. Every team that I have that's contending, I would like to have one of those 3 tight ends on there. Now, obviously, I have contenders that it's not set up like that. But in a perfect world, that's how it would be set up. And this is why I have Hockenson as a sell. We saw earlier how much of an advantage Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Kelce gives you over the field. And Hockenson is literally, like 6 picks after Mark Andrews. If you can find a way to bridge the gap from Hockenson to one of those top 3 tight ends, please, please, please go do it. Now, if you can't, there are some good ways to tier down. You have a trade here that I like where you go TJ Hockenson to Darren Waller in a first. If you can net a first and get down to a Waller, a Greg Dulcich, a David Njoku, I think that is the way to play it if you can't tier up. Now, we have one more buy/sell. Usually I do like 3 buys, 2 sells, but this is a bonus unrelated buy, nothing to do with value over replacement, just a player that I've sort of come around on recently. Now his ADP is 904 as the wide receiver 35. He is my 806 as my wide receiver 34. So like wide receiver rankings are about the same, but I just sort of value a wide receiver 34 with upside a little bit more than the market, I think. And it's really just that I think we're sort of forgetting, or not forgetting. Of course, he's had 2 seasons in the NFL so far. You can't hold his prospect profile as like, magic or, a holy grail and say, look, prospect profile is amazing. He's going to hit. Because if that was the case, there are some guys that should be pretty sick. OJ Howard, if that was the case, would be pretty sick right now. I'm trying to think of the other guys. Stephen Hill would be pretty sick. Marquise Lee would be pretty damn good. Amari Cooper would have a 20-point-per-game season at some point. But it's just not how it works sometimes. So, again, we're going to show his prospect profile, but again, I know that there's more pieces to that puzzle. I just want to reiterate, Rashod Bateman was a damn good prospect. I put a poll up on Twitter the other day, and I don't know why I struggled to get that out, but it sort of like made me reminisce on Rashod Bateman, and I put up a poll, who did you like better as a prospect? Who is the stronger prospect, Jordan Addison or Rashod Bateman? And in my eyes, it's very easily Rashod Bateman. I think he was that good of a prospect. The way that I saw him was in the same tier as a guy like a CeeDee Lamb, right? Like a very locked and loaded first-round wide receiver, checks all the boxes. And this is him next to 6 wide receivers I would say are some of the best prospects by RS grades, by NFL circles, just having, Jamar Chase as a top 5 pick, Sammy Watkins, Amari Cooper, all of that. And this is him next to them in receiving yards per team pass attempt, one of the better receiving metrics we have for prospects, and he goes toe-to-toe with them. He is third among this list of 7 in year 1, first among all of them in year 2, third among all of them in year 3. He is above the threshold all 3 years. He is a really strong prospect, round 1 pick, early declare, 21 years old on the year of the draft, 4.4 speed, 6 foot, 190 pounds, kind of gives him that like Stephon Diggs, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley type archetype of like this modern svelte route runner that we have in the NFL today. And I love it. So we're getting a pretty cheap price here. You don't really have to pay up for Rashod Bateman at all. And when we look through what he's done in the NFL so far, he was injured in year 1, and then he had a pretty promising year 2. I think that people sort of forget early on last season, he had 13.9 points per game versus, or not points per game, he had 13.9 PPR points versus the Jets. He had 2 for 59 and a touchdown. Wasn't anything crazy. He had 7 targets, 4 catches, 108 yards in that next game versus Miami, which was a really, really good game. Then he had week 3 against the Patriots, wasn't great, 2 catches, 59 yards, and then he got hurt. And the issue here, look at the snap share. The snap share is egregious. This team was fielding Devin Duvernay. It was fielding Miles Boykin, and even their fullback was running routes. I can't even remember his name, Ricard or whatever. And this is an issue. 60% snap share, highest in week 1 among this sample. And this is a Greg Roman thing. Greg Roman was rotating the wide receivers. It was a big issue. Like, I remember early on in the season just being so irked by it because Rashod Bateman, when he was on the field, he was making plays. But Greg Roman was like subbing in like Devin Duvernay and doing all of this, I don't know, like rotation stuff, hockey shift stuff. I think we can kind of expect this to no longer be a problem with Todd Monken. I'm optimistic on the entire offense. I outlined it earlier. With Todd Monken, the Ravens are going to pass more. It's going to be electric. Lamar Jackson stays, and it's going to be absolutely magic. And I think we know breakouts happen usually rookie, year 2, year 3. Happens after that a lot of times for more like day 3, like not really highly touted prospects like your Cooper Kupps. I'm trying to think of some other guys too. I guess you could kind of put Stephon Diggs in that category, but a year 3 breakout, like I think we could see a year 3 breakout for Rashod Bateman in this offense with Lamar Jackson, similar to what we saw with like, I think we're really shooting for the stars here. I think this is like his 90th percentile outcome, but I think it's in his range of outcomes. Deebo Samuel in 2021, Calvin Ridley 2020, Godwin in 2019, in that like back end wide receiver 1 area. I think that is in his range. It's not what I'm expecting. If not that, I think that he could just be a solid wide receiver 2 in this offense, give you some spike weeks, and that is absolutely fine, right? You have the upside for more than that. If not, then whatever. No harm, no foul. He gives you just, wide receiver 2 production. You can just move off of that at a later date. Now, when we talk about what we're acquiring him for in terms of what we're paying up, nothing too crazy, right? This is a second and a third for Rashod Bateman in both trades. You can get him for pretty much a second and some change, which I think is a fine way to play it, especially if you are in a rookie draft and like that tier of like Zay Flowers, Hyatt, Downs. Addison's not going to be there, but that tier of wide receivers that like is pretty consensus, like the round 2 wide receivers everybody likes. Those guys are off the board. I don't mind moving off of your 2023 second and getting Bateman if you can do that on the clock or whatever. And then we have this as well, where it seems like you can kind of just throw Rashod Bateman in. If you're making like a blockbuster deal where you're like acquiring a Kyler Murray or you're acquiring a Deshaun Watson or Josh Allen, one of these like first round starter picks, see if you can put Rashod Bateman in the back end of that deal. See if you can kind of put him in there, put him in the back end of that deal. You can get Christian Watson. You can sell Christian Watson, Drake London, and some pieces for Kyler. I think that's kind of wild in itself. But if you can this guy kind of just slipped Rashod Bateman in the back end of that deal. I think that's a really good move to make. Yo. All right, my brother walked in there at the end, but I think I got my point across. You can have him for like a second and some change. You can throw him in the back end of a blockbuster deal. Don't go out there and like hound out your league mates for Rashod Bateman and pay like your 111 or 112. Please, please, please do not do that. But if you can have him for like a mid-second and some change, or you throw him in the back end blockbuster deal, I think that he's a really nice upside bet to make on what was a good college profile, or actually I would call a great college profile in Rashod Bateman. He's really not that expensive for a wide receiver that we can kind of see have a little bit of a year 3 breakout here. Now, that's going to do it for us today. Again, my top 290 Superflex tight end premium ranks, my RS grades, my positional rankings where you have buy, sell, neutral recommendations. You get literally everything that I got. My buy-sell recommendations, my positional tiers, my rankings. You get my rookie rankings. You get I literally already have a top 48 rookie rankings out if you want to see that. My RS grades, you can see my prospect model, my prospect grades, all of that. My redraft stuff, literally everything that I do that isn't available on YouTube to the public is on there. Patreon.com/Ron Stewart. The link will be down below in the description, down below in the comments section as well. If not, just give the video a like if you enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Meaner.